Welcome. Today we're tackling one of the biggest challenges in neonatology, the acutely ill infant who just isn't right. We're going to build, from the ground up, a solid clinical algorithm for when you suspect an inborn error of metabolism, really zeroing in on that key finding of metabolic acidosis. Let's jump right in. So here's our game plan. We'll start with how to spot that first crucial red flag. Then we'll talk about a smart, staged evaluation. After that, we'll get into the real heart of it, decoding metabolic acidosis. We'll cover what to do immediately, and finally, how to put all the different clues together. All right, let's set the scene with a situation that I'm sure is familiar to every single one of you, but it holds the first, most important clue.
You know this call. It's the middle of the night, you've got a lethargic baby, not feeding well, your brain, rightly so, screams sepsis. You start the workup, you hang the antibiotics. But what if a tiny detail in the history, in the timing of it all, could point you in a completely different direction?
And this, right here, is the metabolic red flag. It's that symptom-free interval. See, many babies with an inborn error of metabolism are perfectly fine at birth. They look great for the first day, maybe even two. The illness only crashes in after they've started protein feeds because their little bodies can't handle the load. This so-called honeymoon period, followed by a sudden, sharp decline, that should make you think beyond infection. Okay, so your suspicion is piqued. Now, it can be tempting to just order every metabolic test under the sun, but that's not the most effective way. The smart move is a methodical, staged evaluation. Let me show you what I mean. The whole idea is to start broad and fast. You begin with the tests that are available in basically any hospital and give you answers quickly. Then you use those results to guide your next moves, ordering the more complex, send-out tests only when you have a good reason to. It's about being efficient and strategic. This is your first-line metabolic toolkit. You start with a blood gas and electrolytes. That lets you check for acidosis and calculate the anion gap. At the same time, check a glucose and look for ketones in the blood or urine. And critically, get a stat ammonia level. These four simple things are the absolute bedrock of your workup. All right, now we're at the core of it. The initial labs come back, and sure enough, the baby has a significant metabolic acidosis. This is where having a system, a clear algorithm in your head, is absolutely essential. This is it. Your first, most important fork in the road. Before you do anything else, calculate the anion gap. It's a simple calculation, but it is incredibly powerful. It's going to split your differential diagnosis neatly into two very different piles. And here's why that matters so much. If the anion gap is normal, you're likely dealing with a kidney problem, like a renal tubular acidosis where the body is just losing bicarbonate. But if that anion gap is high, that tells you there's some other unmeasured acid floating around in the blood. And that acid is very often a toxic metabolite from an inborn error of metabolism. This is a huge clue. So, you've established a high anion gap metabolic acidosis. Your next question is simple, and you can often answer it with a quick urine dipstick. Are there ketones? The answer, yes or no, is going to narrow your differential dramatically. This is such a critical distinction. If you see a ton of ketones, you should be thinking strongly about an organic acidemia, things like methylmalonic or propionic acidemia. But if you see the opposite, hypoglycemia without any ketones, that is the classic textbook sign of a fatty acid oxidation defect. The body can't break down fat to make ketones for energy. Now, a quick word of caution, preemies can be a bit tricky. Their ability to make ketones isn't fully developed, so you have to interpret a lack of ketones carefully in them. Now, while you're being this brilliant detective, remember there's a sick baby in front of you who is getting worse by the minute. You absolutely cannot wait for a final diagnosis to start treatment. The goal right now is to stop the body from making more of whatever toxin is building up. The entire principle is to flip the body's metabolic switch from catabolism, breaking things down, to anabolism, building things up. So step 1, stop all protein. You have to cut off the supply of the stuff that's turning into poison. Step 2, start a high-dose glucose infusion to give the body a clean fuel source. This tells the body, hey, you don't need to break down protein anymore. If the sugar gets too high, you can even add an insulin drip to help push that glucose into the cells. And finally, be thinking ahead. Have the conversation about hemodialysis early because you might need it to clean the toxins out of the blood. So we've gone deep on metabolic acidosis, but remember, it rarely exists in a vacuum. Let's zoom out for a second and see how it fits in with other key lab findings to build a more complete picture. You see, different patterns point to different diseases. For example, while acidosis points to organic acidemias, What if you have a sky-high ammonia but a normal pH or even an alkalosis? Well, that's the classic picture of a urea cycle defect. What if the main problem is profound hypoglycemia? Then you should be thinking about a fatty acid oxidation defect or a glycogen storage disease. Each of these patterns has its own set of specific follow-up tests to confirm the diagnosis.
I love this quote because it really gets to the heart of what we've been talking about. You don't need to have every single biochemical pathway memorized. What's far more important is having a solid, reliable system, knowing the approach, how to think through the problem, what to order first, and how to interpret those initial results. That's what saves lives.
Mastering this clinical framework is absolutely essential for what we do today. But it's interesting to think about the future, right? Will there come a day when rapid genetic sequencing just gives us the answer on day one, making these algorithms obsolete? Or will the art and science of clinical reasoning always have a central role? It's a fascinating question. Thanks so much for joining me today.